Hello, my name is Demetra Kaye of the Demetra Kaye Show here on YouTube and the proud contributor of the African Diaspora News channel. So if you can do me a favor and that's like this video and subscribe to both channels if you haven't already. All right, so let's get into it. So we have learned recently that the FBI is once again hot on the trail of that of Assata Shakur, who is now seeking, or has been for over 40 years, seeking political asylum in Cuba. Now, for those of you guys who are not familiar with the story of Assata Shakur, she was a member of the Black Liberation Army in the early 1970s. And among a whole host of things, she and two other members were accused of killing a police officer in New Jersey on the New Jersey Turnpike. Okay, that was in 1973. Now, her and Assata Shakur, they stood trial. The third person was killed there in a shootout, is what they were calling it. So they stood trial, and ultimately they were sentenced to life in prison. Now, I should also say, most of us who are familiar with any Black organization, even in today's time in 2021, Black organizations are often targeted due to programs that were set up by the FBI, like COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO, you guys know, have been around since the 50s, and it was organized by that of J. Edgar Hoover, who targeted a whole host of groups who they thought were adverse to America, right? And so specifically, they targeted Black organizations, the Black Panther Party, the Nation of Islam, and even before COINTELPRO was in existence, J. Edgar Hoover was messing with that of Marcus Garvey, all right? And so BLA, Black Liberation Army, was no different. And so once Assata Shakur was sentenced to life in prison, she stayed there about 2 years. And I should also say, while she was going through trials and going back and forth through a lot of prisons, she was tortured and beaten, and just a whole bunch of things happened to her because, she was labeled a cop killer. And so roughly 2 years after she was sentenced to life in prison, she escaped from prison, with the help of another member of the Black Liberation, not Black Liberation, but Black Liberation Army. They helped her escape, and she made it to Cuba, and she's been there ever since. Now, the FBI and a whole host of political figures, usually those on the right and some on the left, but they have been wanting to get Assata Shakur for the longest. And in 2013, Governor Chris Christie, who was the governor of New Jersey at the time, he wanted to strike a deal with the Obama administration, because you guys remember, the Obama administration is actually the one that helped bridge the gap between Cuba and America, because there was the Bay of Pigs and a whole host of things that kept Cuba and America divided. And so Chris Christie wrote a letter to Obama saying, hey, before you make this deal with Cuba, you guys get friendly again, ask them to send Assata Shakur back here because she is a fugitive. Now, mind you, Assata Shakur was the first woman on the FBI's most wanted list, right? And she still is. So they wanted her back. In fact, they put a $2 million, they being Chris Christie and them, put a $2 million bounty on her head for anybody who, I guess, would go and be so bold to go into Cuba and get Assata Shakur. So to this date, nobody has done that. And so Obama was like, yeah, while I guess you want her, that's not something I'm interested in doing. And so he did not agree to doing that. Okay, so here we are in modern day time, 2021, if you want to call that modern day. The FBI said, hey, you know what? If you guys will help us figure out where she is, we'll pay up to $1 million to get her here, to return her home. Now, we know that Cuba has always been friendly with African American. I say African, and Africans all over the diaspora, really. But they have always been very friendly with Black people. In every way, shape, and form, they could, try to help Black people. And it is said that at one point in time, there was 90 African-American fugitives in Cuba seeking asylum. And so Cuba has made it very clear that we're not interested. We're not interested in, bringing Assata Shakur to you. She's fine here. And we do not want to disrupt the camaraderie that we have with Black people all over the world. And America also has, people who have fled persecution in Cuba. They're holding them in America and providing a safe haven for them. And so they're not interested in turning over Assata Shakur. Now, why I said all of that? Okay, I said all of that to say this. It is just mind-blowing that especially we as Black people, we are so quick to forgive and let it go, right? We forgive and let it go. You name it. Everything throughout history, for the most part, we have forgiven and let it go. It's in South Carolina when Dylan Roof went in there and shot up the church. What did the family members of the murdered say? We forgive him. We don't want him to have the death penalty. God will want us to forgive. We've seen, the Botham Jean's family get up and cry and hug in court with Amber Geiger after she murdered their loved one. And like we just keep seeing, I showed you guys a video the other day, even though the trumpet player, his name escapes me, his last name is Harold. But even though he's saying he wants her to come to justice, we saw him blowing a nice rendition of We Shall Overcome on his trumpet. And so we're always willing to let it go and forgive. But look at white America. White America ain't letting nothing go when it comes to Black people. They will not let it go. Assata has had asylum in Cuba for over 40 years, and they keep trying to bring her back. They got, upwards of $3 million to try to bring her back from Cuba to America, and they've also labeled her as armed and dangerous. Assata is roughly 73 years old. 73, like how much of a danger can this, elderly woman be? But that's the propaganda that they put out, about our people. And I would impress upon you all, if you haven't heard or know the story of Assata Shakur, please, there's lots of information on YouTube. She has an autobiography. There's so much stuff out there. Get to know the truth. They have framed her to be this very dangerous person. At the time when she was in the, Black Liberation Army, they said that they being the police and the FBI, they formed this narrative to try to make people think that she was responsible for nearly all of the bank robberies on the East Coast at the time, because they were accused, their organization was accused of bank robberies and a whole host of things. But it's documented that they formed this narrative against her to taint the public opinion about her. And even to this day, they are doing that, calling her, as a 73-year-old woman, armed and dangerous. But I really want to tell y'all, just think about that when we are so busy hugging and forgiving and turning the other cheek and letting stuff go. Think about the things that white America will never, ever forgive and let go. Even though it has been proven that Assata Shakur is not guilty and has been framed by that of COINTELPRO and just, propaganda of the government. This is the government's narrative that they formed against this woman, and she is safe in Cuba. But they refused to let it go. Out of all the people they could pursue, they want to pursue a 73-year-old grandmother at this point, and probably a great-grandmother, I would imagine, at this point. They're trying to pursue her for what? Because they refused to let it go. So you think about that when they ask us to let it go. And so anyway, for more insightful videos, please subscribe to this channel and my channel, The Demetra Kaye Show on YouTube. Peace.